Take a look at your screen right now. You're looking at videos of people getting arrested for DUI, but WSMV Investigates found in each case, the people being arrested are sober.
One look at how William Rose performs on his field sobriety test, and you can see why he's in trouble. And listen to what the officer says he smelled.
We could smell some alcohol coming from the car.
Not long after, Murfreesboro police put him in handcuffs.
I was very cordial with them, but I was scared to death.
Scared and confused because Rose was completely sober.
I kept telling him, I said, sir, you're making a mistake. I have not been drinking. I'm not impaired.
So you may be thinking it's a rare case, except it also happened to Bill Shank in Clarksville. His DUI arrest was plastered all over a local media outlet.
It feels surreal. It's like a joke.
And to Katie Slayton in Franklin. She was arrested in front of her child's daycare. Sober Middle Tennesseans arrested for DUI. And as a result, they say their lives are ruined. Not just because of the public stigma, but because a WSMV4 investigation found they have to wait months for blood tests to come back from the state of Tennessee, showing they were sober. As Rose waited for his blood test results, he lost his job, his insurance, and racked up hefty legal fees.
We lost close to $30,000 between legal fees and impound fees.
Slayton, who was charged with DUI and felony child neglect, had her child removed by DCS for 9 weeks.
They have traumatized my son. They have traumatized me.
Shank says while months passed by, so did jobs.
I lost 2 job opportunities because when you do my name and my city, my mugshot comes right up. It's not a flattering portrayal.
Attorney Bernie McAvoy's client was arrested by Goodlettsville police for DUI and was completely sober.
This particular client had to wait 8 months for that chemical test to prove that he had not consumed anything at all.
But hold on, you may be thinking, didn't all these people fail field sobriety tests? Well, our investigation found completely sober people can perform badly, especially if they have health issues. Remember that Rose clearly couldn't walk a straight line?
I have struggled with balance. I've been bow-legged most of my life, so I've struggled with balance for a long time.
Slayton says she was so traumatized about doing a field sobriety test while police took her child away into the daycare that she performed badly. And Shank says his ADD makes it hard for him to follow directions.
When your whole mind is like, this isn't real, it's like a dream. It's like Charlie Brown's teachers talking to you.
We also found that indicators of a drunk driver can be wrong. Police said they could smell alcohol in Rose's car.
Post-COVID world, I grabbed some Purell and put some hand sanitizer on.
And in Shank's car.
Said the car smells like alcohol.
But Shank is an Uber driver, and at the time he was arrested, his passenger in the back seat had been drinking. So why not just use a breathalyzer to immediately show that they were sober?
I asked for a breathalyzer, they refused one. They said, we don't do them in Murfreesboro.
In fact, many police departments no longer use breathalyzers. A spokesman for Murfreesboro Police say they find blood tests to be more accurate. But our investigation found the state says the average wait to get toxicology tests back, which completely exonerates a person from any impairment, is 3 months. But we found that's not what happened in these cases. Both Rose and Shank had to wait nearly twice that long, almost 6 months. And Slayton waited 8 months.
Is that acceptable?
No, that's not acceptable.
Jennifer Hall is the regional administrator of the TBI Crime Lab.
There are times that our turnaround time was not acceptable.
Hall says there's a backlog of alcohol and toxicology blood tests. The amount of cases simply outnumbers the staff able to quickly process them. They've hired more scientists this year and say turnaround is improving.
Anytime someone's life is impacted by waiting on a result, that's a lot. And I think we want to improve. We want to do better. I feel like we're going in the right direction.
Rose says the direction of his life fell, awaiting proof of his innocence.
I didn't even get an apology letter from Murfreesboro Police Department, saying, hey, yeah, we goofed up, we messed up. And this has destroyed my life.
Okay, all the people we profiled had their charges dismissed. We reached out to each of the police departments who made their arrests. All issued statements defending those arrests as their officers were basing their decision on suspicion of DUIs. You can read their responses right now on the WSMV4 app. Marius?
Jeremy, this is hard to believe, and clearly this could happen to anyone. So what can you do if this happens to you?
Well, first of all, you've got to respect law enforcement. You have to understand that they are doing a serious job that in most cases busts drunk drivers. But you got to be frank with them. Do you have medical issues? Do you have health problems? Anything that may cause you to fail a sobriety test. You need to disclose that. And if you are arrested and given the blood test, you can email the TBI and make frequent requests for updates.
We're finding more cases tonight of people being completely sober, but still arrested for DUI.
And a device that could immediately prove you weren't drunk on alcohol isn't being used by some police departments. Our chief investigative reporter, Jeremy Finley, continues to investigate how this is happening to sober drivers.
That's right. In each of these cases that we found, a breathalyzer wasn't used, something even the TBI doesn't understand. Within moments of picking up her son last November, Shelley Hoover found herself outside her car, asked by police to perform a field sobriety test.
I told them I was not drunk, that I was perfectly fine.
In the affidavit, Hoover admits she'd had one shot hours earlier, which explains why police smelled alcohol on her breath. When police say she then failed the test,
I had my glasses on, they made me remove them. And from what I gather, that was the part of the test that I failed.
she was arrested. She then asked for a device that would immediately prove she was sober.
I wasn't drunk, and I asked for a breathalyzer. They said they didn't do breathalyzers.
And Hoover isn't alone. When William Rose was suspected of driving drunk in Murfreesboro, he made the same request to his arresting officer.
I asked for a breathalyzer. They refused one. They said, we don't do them in Murfreesboro.
Both were charged with DUI. In Hoover's case, because her son was in the car, she was also charged with felony child neglect. How long were you separated from your son?
For 19 days.
And also required to install and pay for an alcohol detection device like this one for her car.
I was treated guilty and had to prove myself innocent.
Because of a backlog in alcohol and drug tests at the TBI, first uncovered by WSMV4 Investigates, it took Hoover 4 months to get the results back. Negative on alcohol, no detection of drugs. Rose was also sober when he was charged with a DUI and waited 6 months to prove he wasn't drunk either. We asked both Laverne and Murfreesboro police for an interview as to why breathalyzers weren't used, but both sent statements instead. Laverne reading, they haven't used breathalyzers in years, as blood draws have become the accepted and preferred practice in suspected DUI cases, adding that blood draws allow investigators to not only check blood alcohol levels, but also to check for drug use that can impair a driver. Murfreesboro police wrote, our department has found that blood analysis is more reliable. You're aware that police departments aren't using breathalyzers as much?
Yes, we are aware of that.
Do you know why?
A lot of them will tell us they do not trust the result.
But where's that coming from? You're the scientist. You would know this.
I have no idea.
Jennifer Hall is the regional administrator of the TBI Crime Lab. The TBI provides free breathalyzers to police departments across the state. Why is there a perception in law enforcement that it's not as accurate as a blood test?
I have no idea.
Hall says breathalyzers are just as accurate as blood draws. And if more police departments used them, it would cut down on the number of alcohol tests they'd have to perform. Using more breathalyzers would appear to help the backlog.
Yes.
Meaning sober drivers charged with DUI would get proof of their innocence quicker.
It was heartbreaking. I never, ever wish this to happen to anybody else, ever.
To further complicate this situation, if someone is arrested for a DUI and their blood test for alcohol comes back negative, the TBI then automatically has to retest the blood for drugs. And that only extends how long it will take to get completely vindicated if you are sober.
I certainly regret that, and I really deeply I hurt for what they went through.
That is an apology from the police chief of Goodlettsville to innocent people arrested by his police department.
A WSMV4 investigation uncovered multiple DUI arrests dismissed from arrests all made by one officer in Goodlettsville.
So it's the latest discovery by Chief Investigative Reporter Jeremy Finley into how you can be sober and still get a DUI.
Performing a field sobriety test is not what Jeff Adams expected last September as he was heading to his job as a teacher in Brentwood.
I figured I could pass it because I wasn't drinking. I was on my way to school. It was 5:52 a.m.
Video recorded by an officer shows Adams didn't do well standing on one leg. Still, Adams couldn't believe what happened next. Listen.
Sir, I have not drank a thing. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I don't do drugs.
And Adams wasn't lying. 4 months later, his blood test results show no alcohol, no drugs. But the arresting officer, Noah Warner, wrote he showed several signs of impairment.
I don't think you're safe to operate a motor vehicle.
Can I call my school to let them know that I need a substitute?
The case against Adams was ultimately dismissed. The damage, though, was already done.
It was the most traumatic experience to know that I'm being arrested. I'm about to be fingerprinted, mugshotted. All the man's got is his reputation and his name. And it's getting smeared, and I didn't appreciate it.
Chokes you up a little bit.
It does.
And a WSMV4 investigation found this isn't the only DUI arrest made by Officer Werner that was dismissed. Turns out Adams is the third sober driver to be arrested by Werner for a DUI last year.
There's a problem. There's a pattern, is what this is.
I certainly regret that, and I really deeply, I hurt for what they went through.
Chief Gary Goodwin is Werner's boss at Goodlettsville Police.
If you had just one case, that would be one thing. But in this officer's case, you have 3 people who were sober and arrested for DUI. So what does that tell you?
It doesn't necessarily tell me anything. Obviously, it's concerning. You hate it for these 3 people.
Goodwin admits he's frustrated by the situation. Look at the reports. All 3 drivers, including Adams, showed multiple signs of impairment. In one case, a driver had a half-empty beer can in the driver's side door, but they were all found to be sober.
I'm looking at them and I'm saying, I'm not sure how I fix this.
And an ongoing WSMV4 investigation shows it's not just Goodlettsville. Police are arresting sober people for DUIs all over the mid-state. And because of a backlog at the TBI for alcohol and toxicology reports, we found some innocent drivers are waiting 8 months to get results back. And in many times, sober drivers are asking for breathalyzers. Listen. But they didn't. You can see in the video, Adams was taken to get a blood draw instead. After that, he was taken to jail.
Why not use a breathalyzer each time? That would at least tell you if that person had been drinking alcohol.
So many people that we see now, they're under the influence, but it's not necessarily alcohol.
And a blood test, which takes longer to get back, is the only way to know for sure.
I just put myself in their position, and how would I feel if this happened to me?
Adams knows how it feels each and every time he drives past where he was arrested.
Sometimes I'll refer to it as the scene of the crime, because it was a crime against me.
Jeff Adams kept his job as a teacher. He was not suspended. The additional problem is that he also drives for Uber, and because of his arrest, Uber suspended him. And he estimates he lost out on $15,000 in potential earnings.
Jeremy, this story was so hard to watch. So is Goodlettsville Police doing anything different as a result of this?
Well, the chief says they're reviewing these cases to see if there's anything they need to be doing differently in their field sobriety testing. But the real challenge is that there are so many real drunk drivers, police can't take the risk of not arresting somebody, even if they suspect them of being intoxicated. But these drivers are angry and they are asking for change.
A Rutherford County deputy is being criticized tonight for arresting and charging a sober driver with DUI. Good evening, I'm Marius Payton.
I'm Lauren Lowry. And I'm Tracy Cornett. This deputy was just awarded a top honor by Mothers Against Drunk Driving for arresting the highest number of suspected drunk drivers.
Our chief investigative reporter, Jeremy Finley, continues his reporting into how sober people are getting DUIs in Tennessee. Okay, so Jeremy, you just keep finding more innocent people charged with this crime.
Yeah, we sure do. And they are also suffering not only from the humiliation of being charged with a DUI while they're sober, but they have to wait months for blood tests to come back to clear their name. In our investigations, we've been looking closely at the body cameras of these arrests and found troubling similarities.
There's a joke around the pool halls in Rutherford County about what David Dutton doesn't shoot.
But kidding me about me being drunk, and they all know that I don't drink.
So you can imagine what his son thought when he got a call from his dad last August.
He said, I got arrested last night. And I said, wait, what?
Saying he'd been arrested for a DUI after playing pool.
So my first was just like, okay, like, what could you have done? You're 75 years old. I know he doesn't drink.
But after being pulled over for a missing headlight and for drifting off the shoulder, Dutton was arrested for DUI, booked, and spent hours in jail. It would take 5 months for the test results to come back, showing he was completely sober the entire time.
The stress level was really bad, and I thought, wow, this is actually how I lose my dad. You know, I thought he would have a heart attack.
And the officer who arrested him, Deputy Zach Williams, was awarded the 2023 Top Enforcer honor in the county by Mothers Against Drunk Driving for charging the most drivers, 51 with DUIs, the previous year. By the numbers, an expert on identifying suspected drunk drivers. So how did an expert then charge an innocent man with a crime? And why are we finding case after case of it happening to other sober drivers throughout Middle Tennessee? Well, body camera footage reviewed by WSMV4 Investigates shows a common theme that could explain why it's happening. Take a look. Not only did Dutton offer up his debit card instead of his ID when officers approached, he repeatedly stumbles during the field sobriety test.
I was just out of balance. Gotcha.
But Dutton also acknowledges his medical problems. He's diabetic, hadn't taken his insulin that night, and suffers from a slipped disc.
So you've been dealing with a disc for 45 years? Oh, yeah.
Even though the deputy notes, Dutton says he does not have any other physical restrictions, Dutton's son says his 75-year-old father forgot to mention one major issue.
My dad has had vertigo for 10 years.
Here's why that's important. We found sober drivers getting DUIs often have health problems that can impact how they perform on field sobriety tests. William Rose is bow-legged. Bill Shank and Katie Slayton have ADHD, which makes it harder to pay attention to instructions. But there's also this. Before Dutton was even given a field sobriety test, listen to what officers say about people who shoot pool.
Never known a sober person shoot much pool. Oh, I know.
If you show up on a crime scene looking for someone to arrest, you will find someone to arrest.
Murfreesboro attorney Scott Kimberly did not represent Dutton, but estimates he's had 10 to 15 sober clients arrested for DUI and believes too often officers feel they must make an arrest, even if a driver acknowledges health problems.
Increased training to help explain to officers what non-substance abuse, non-alcohol, non-drug explanations could exist for what may otherwise look like criminal conduct.
We wanted to talk to Rutherford County Sheriff's Office and especially Deputy Zach Williams, but their spokeswoman denied that request. Writing in part, we understand that in some rare cases, blood tests return indicating no drugs or alcohol. In those cases, the charges are dismissed. But that does not mean that probable cause did not exist at the time of the arrest. Probable cause that made this pool shark sink to a new level of humiliation.
It was embarrassing because I had to call a neighbor, well, my cousin really, lives 2 doors down from me, to come and get me at 3 o'clock in the morning and tell him I was in jail.
Okay, so Jeremy, are police officers even required to conduct a medical assessment before you're asked to do a field sobriety test?
Well, they are, Lauren. One of them is what you're seeing here. It shows how well you can follow an object with your eyes. And Mr. Dutton actually passed that test and then failed the field sobriety test. As you just heard, attorneys like Scott Kimberly say it's time for training statewide on DUI arrests to focus more on potential other reasons people fail the test.
As part of our sobering problem investigation, we've analyzed never-before-seen TBI data.
Chief investigative reporter Jeremy Finley found more than 600 Tennesseans have been arrested for DUI and were completely sober.
It's something you notice almost immediately.
Good morning.
In the body camera footage of officers approaching Xavier Gray.
Go ahead and turn the car off for me, okay?
His hands are in the air.
First of all, I'm scared of the police.
You got anything to drink tonight?
No, sir.
But Gray, like so many other drivers who've spoken with WSMV4 Investigates, wasn't concerned at first.
Well, I'm gonna run you through some the field sobriety test, just make sure you're good to drive and everything, okay?
Oh, yeah. I know I'm not under the influence of anything.
And he thought he performed well until this.
I'm placing you on the wrist for driving under the influence, okay?
Huh? I don't even drink or anything. That's crazy. I work for a living driving a dump truck, and this is what I do. This is my whole livelihood. I was really afraid about losing my license.
Gray is the latest person we found to be charged with a DUI whose blood work would come back showing he was completely sober. For months, we've been emailing back and forth with the TBI, asking for blood work data that shows just how often it's happening in Tennessee. And it turns out we weren't the only ones asking.
I've seen the news stories that you all did.
State Representative Lowell Russell had seen our sobering problems investigations. And after one of his constituents was arrested for a DUI, while he was completely sober, he asked the TBI for the data as well. After months of requests, the TBI finally produced the data. Turns out it wasn't dozens, but more than 600 Tennesseans, 609 to be exact, innocent drivers, totally sober, charged with DUI. For perspective, if all of the sober drivers charged with DUI went to the Ryman, they would take up more than half of the seats in the upper balcony.
I just wonder what you think about that.
It's a miscarriage of justice. It seems like they're doing it everywhere around Tennessee, man.
Nobody wants drunk drivers on the road, ever. But what does it say that we keep finding sober people being arrested for DUI?
I have heard of those on a very, very limited scale, and those are, of course, tragic for everyone involved.
Tragic cases that lets drivers like Gray know he is hardly alone.
You know what's so scary is just thinking about how hard I work to stay out of trouble, right? And then to have something like this happen.
Jeremy, the implications of this, they're just so widespread. Hundreds of innocent people charged with crimes they didn't even commit.
Yeah, Lauren, we just obtained this data on Friday, so now we're sharing it with prosecutors and lawmakers to try to get their reaction. Representative Russell says he wants the TBI to create a database for all crimes in Tennessee, showing what a person was charged with and whether or not they were convicted. We know sober people charged with DUI often have their mugshots appear online. If this database is created, it at least would be a public record showing what the crimes against them were dismissed.
Video you've got to see. It shows state police wrongfully arresting 7 innocent people for a crime they didn't commit.
7 sober drivers charged with DUI arrested by different troopers in different parts of the state.
It's the latest discovery in Chief Investigative Reporter Jeremy Finley's sobering problem investigation.
Go ahead and step on out of the car and we're going to have a conversation, okay?
On the evening of June 23rd, Stephanie Fair was about to find out she was in double trouble.
There's a very distinct odor of alcohol that comes from either a person or inside the vehicle.
Right.
Okay.
I understand, but I, on my life, I don't drink alcohol. I just ate.
When he started asking me about drinking, I instantly got this feeling in my stomach, like, this is bad.
And it was. She'd been pulled over for failing to move over, something the state trooper was not pleased about.
She almost hit me when I was wrapping up a traffic stop. I come up to the car and it just reeks of alcohol. How's she doing the test? You can see it in her eyes.
He clearly states he could smell the odor of alcohol beverage.
Yeah, when he said he could smell it, I know this is corrupt. This is completely wrong.
Place your hands behind your back.
Why?
Because you're being placed under arrest for DUI.
But I don't, wait.
Ma'am?
Why? But I haven't drank anything. But I don't drink.
And she was right. Not only did her blood work show she had neither alcohol nor drugs in her system, her attorney got video of where she'd been before being pulled over. That's her getting ice cream.
I have I'm sorry. I have to try. I was more scared being with that cop alone than I actually was inside the jail. I was terrified.
Candace Slate can sympathize.
It's hurting to do that on my knee.
After her car flipped in an accident, a state trooper asked her to do a field sobriety test. Clearly in pain, she doesn't do well.
I know I bombed it. I mean, I was in shock.
Go ahead and put your hands behind your back under arrest for dominant influence.
I'm sorry, what? I thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose my daughter, who I can't lose her. You know, I can't lose my license. I mean, this is my life.
Several $1,000s paid to an attorney later, she got her blood work. No alcohol. Her level of prescription medication so low, the charge of DUI was dismissed.
I ended up broke, trying to prove my innocence. Yes, I won. It was dismissed, but I'm terrified to drive now.
It also happened to Labrisha Beatty.
It has had a traumatic impact on me.
An employee of NASA, a state trooper charged her with DUI in Giles County. Her blood work later showed she was completely sober.
There is a real issue. There is an issue in Tennessee.
And it turns out state troopers didn't just wrongfully arrest these three women. They also arrested Reed Hawley and Henry Esslinger and Keith Von Susten and Thomas Mannis, all arrested for DUI, whose blood work later showed they were sober enough to drive.
But those are just the cases of drivers that we found. Turns out there is no data of who's making the false arrests. You may recall, we obtained TBI data that shows 609 people in Tennessee have been arrested for DUI in a 7-year period, whose blood work came back showing they were completely sober. But the TBI tells us they don't keep track of which police agencies are making the arrests.
When you look at just the sheer numbers of people, it's clear that we need to do something differently to make sure that this does not continue to happen to anybody.
Something's wrong, and somebody's not following the proper standards.
We took our findings to Matthew Myatt, a DUI detection expert in Atlanta. His advice to the state's police agencies?
Establish an independent commission to determine the cause. Whether it's training, whether it's bad officers, whether it's a misunderstanding of the proper procedures, whatever the state of Tennessee needs to do to fix this problem, they need to take affirmative, positive steps immediately.
Okay, Jeremy, so many questions after seeing these videos. I want to go back to the first woman we met in your story. Why did the trooper say he smelled alcohol when the driver was sober?
Yeah, Lauren, for 3 days now, we've been asking for an interview with the Highway Patrol to ask those kinds of questions. A spokesman for the THP says they are continuing to review our findings, and we continue to press them for an interview. It remains unclear, bottom line, why the trooper said he smelled alcohol. Stephanie Fair says she didn't have any perfume on, she hadn't used hand sanitizer, and the trooper ultimately found no alcohol in her car.